Hello everybody and welcome to my sewing room. If you haven't been here before, my name is Rosemary, and recently we've been working on making some dolls. I make dolls to give away to children in crisis, and I thought it would be really fun to teach everybody how to make those dolls if they come to my charity sews in the store, or if you go to the charity sew in San Diego. You might want to be able to make them at home. We're all dealing with COVID right now, and we're not being able to get together as a group. So this is a fun way for you to learn how to make a baby doll, whether you want to keep it, give it to your grandchildren, or bring it in and give it to our doll ministry, whichever way it works for you. So anyway, one of the things I wanted to start with was to tell you that my dolls, and if you've already made one, you will discover that they are not exactly your standard size doll. So it's kind of hard to find a pattern for it. I like to buy a lot of the ones that are in the stores that say 18-inch dolls on it. This one says 15-inch dolls. This is one of my very favorite doll patterns. I've used it for absolutely years. It works pretty good. You don't have to make a lot of adjustments to it. This is a new one that I just found that says 14-inch dolls, but it's still too big. So I have to lay the patterns out on the baby doll to make them fit. Another thing that I really like is this book, and you can see that mine is really beat up. I've had it for probably 20 years, but you can still find it sometimes online. It's called The Doll's Dressmaker. It has all different sizes in it and different styles, and it's just really fun to see what you can make for your baby dolls with it. So it's a really great book if you can find it. I'm going to just drop it down here. So the next thing that I want to talk about a little bit is just how to make it a little bit easier to make doll clothes. Once you've taken your doll and laid it down and laid the pattern on it, made sure that it feels like it's the right side, made a few adjustments, maybe trace it on some tracing paper and recut it till you know that it fits your doll just right. I don't care what the directions say in the pattern. One, don't cut facings. That's what we do on adult clothes and some children's clothes, but for doll clothes it's crazy to do facings. Cut twice as many pieces as you're supposed to cut for the bodice. So this is the bodice back, and it says to cut 2, and I cut 4. And this is the bodice front that's cut on a fold, and it says cut 1, and I cut 2, because that way we can line it while we're putting it together, and it will finish the neckline for you automatically. This pattern actually has the sleeve with a line going down the middle of it, which is great because all we have to do is fold it, and that way the edge is already finished, and you don't really have to do a whole lot to the edge unless you want to put lace or something on it. Then don't cut it out like this. But this works really good for me. Then I can make a really good casing for my elastic really fast and put it in, and I'll show you how to go about doing that. And then you just want to cut your skirt. Usually all I do is I measure about 6 inches and then cut a nice long piece and fit it on there. A little dress is pretty fast and easy to do. And we'll go ahead and put this dress together, and then I'll show you how I make the shirt, pretty much using the same techniques, so you can see how we do that. And I've got some of my dolls back behind me, and I'll show you those when we're all done. So let's go ahead. I'm going to move the camera and put it closer to the sewing machine so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so here's our pieces. This is my back pieces, and I cut 4 of them, like I said that I was going to do. There's 4 of those, and there's 2 of these cut on a fold. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the one that's on a fold, and then I'm going to take the 2 backs, and I'm going to lay them right at the shoulder area right here, just like that. And I'm going to sew my shoulders on both sets of 4. So for the most part, when I do most of my clothing sewing, I use a lot of pins. I don't do a lot of basting. For little doll clothes, I don't really need to put pins on it. I just want to line it up with the edge of my foot and sew straight across that shoulder. And I don't know if you've ever heard the term clothesline sewing. My mom used to do it because she made clothes for 9 children, basically all at once, several outfits at a time. All you have to do is just put your next piece down, line up your pieces, and keep going. And that way you don't have a lot of cut ends, and we can take them off later. So I'm going to open up these pieces and finger press them just like that, so they're nice and flat. I can take them over to the iron later and press them out really nice, but all I need to do right now is finger press them. And then I'm going to take the second piece and I'm going to lay it right sides together right on top of the last piece, just like that, so that everything comes together right. And here, I probably will go ahead and put a pin, just because I want those shoulders to stay together. Put a pin here, and put a pin here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew straight up the back, around the neck, and straight back down again. And that will finish off the edges, so I don't have to go back and do it later on by trying to do a small rolled hem or something. So I'm just going to sew straight up here. My machine is really great because the needle goes down for me and all I have to do is lift it. I actually have a button on my machine that if I highlight it, it will do a pivot for me automatically. So you'll see if I stop right here, the needle will go down, the foot will come up. So that's a nice way to be able to pivot when you go around corners. Just very carefully, don't go too fast, and ease around this small area. Again, I'm using the edge of my foot as a guide. I don't need to measure out a 1/4 inch or a 5/8 seam. I just need enough of a seam to hold this together. So the edge of my foot with my needle in the center is usually all I need to do. I'm going to come to the corner here and pivot this way and then go straight down. And now I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to come back here where I've sewn, and I'm going to turn this around where you can see it. I'm going to clip these curves so I can get around that corner really good, and probably cut off the edge there. So I'll show that to you in a minute. So you can see that I've clipped this right up to my stitching, and then in the corner here, I went ahead and I cut it a slant across there. So now I can put my thumb up inside of here like this. I'm going to fold this side and this side in, and then I'm going to turn it like that. And then I'll flip it around to this side, and I'll do the same thing. Turn this whole thing around. Okay, so here is our sleeve pattern that I showed you before. And what we want to do is we want to fold this over so that it's automatically lined and the edges are finished, and we can take that back to the iron and press it down if you want to, but I'm just going to finger press it. The first thing I want to do before I try to put it on the bodice though is I want to run a gathering stitch here. So what I'm going to do is change my stitch length on my machine to as high as it'll go, which is a 5, and I'm just going to run a stitch. I accidentally picked the one that does an automatic tie off. I don't want it to tie a knot because I want to pull on it. So, and I'm just going to run a stitch around the top like this. And I'll do that on both pieces. And then you should be able to just grab the edge like this and pull on it. And you don't need to gather it a lot. Just enough on the top to make it fit that small space. Just that little tiny bit of a gather is probably more than enough. So the other thing is that if you are a dressmaker, you know that you should sew your side seams first and then insert the sleeve. But this is a little teeny tiny doll dress, and we can't do an inserted sleeve and still fit it on our sewing machine. So we're going to leave it flat. And we're going to take our sleeve and we're going to put it right here, starting with the center on the shoulder, and then putting a pin right there to hold that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of very carefully move this around like this so that it fits. This is probably the hardest part of making a doll dress, is trying to fit this in here. I have to kind of gather this up a little bit more. I want to make sure it all fits in there right. Whoops, don't hit your pin. That can be disastrous. And then I'm going to just pull it back, make sure that I actually caught it all the way around. It looks pretty good to me. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to sew a casing for my elastic across the bottom so I can gather this little sleeve up. You could actually fold this and sew the side seam and leave it open like that, and that's kind of a fun sleeve too. I've done that before. If you're making a little boy's shirt, of course you don't want to gather it up and make it fluffy on the top, but you can leave it plain like that, and that's a nice way to finish it. But I want to put a casing on this so that I can put some elastic in it. So I'm going to figure my elastic is about 1/4 inch wide, so probably if I put the edge of my foot on here and put my needle in the center, it's going to be big enough. But you do want to measure your elastic and make sure that you have enough room to pull it in there. And I'm just going to sew a straight seam all the way across like this. And then we're going to put the elastic in there. Okay, so everybody's got their own way of putting elastic in. I don't know how you do it. I do it with a simple safety pin on a piece of elastic. And this is a nice, soft, stretchable elastic. And I've measured it around the arm of my doll and then added about another 1/2 inch so I have some room. And I'm going to put it through my casing that I've just created and just ease it through here until it gets all the way to the other side. And sometimes when you're doing pants or something, you can accidentally pull the edge through the other side. And that's really frustrating. That drives me crazy when I do that, because then you basically have to start all over again. So be really careful that you don't accidentally do that as you go to pull this through. Sometimes when you get to this side, you want to put a pin in it so it doesn't get come all the way through to the other side. I can take a small pin and put it right there to keep it from coming through, and then get this to come through on this side, probably just a little bit on either side. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to fold the sleeve over so that the corners come together, and where the sleeve ends and the underarm comes together right. And then I'm going to put it on my sewing machine. Watch that pin. Usually what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and put my foot down and then pull the pin out. Watch that safety pin. See, I got it caught in there. And then I'm going to just sew the side seams up straight up this here. And since I'm going through elastic, I'm going to back it up and go back over it twice, because I want to make sure that it doesn't pull that elastic back out again. And I'm going to sew that, and then I'm going to do the other side exactly the same way. Okay, so here's my bodice completely finished with both the sleeves and everything, and you can see that the neck and the back is finished up for me, so I don't really have to do a whole lot more to my bodice. Here is the piece I told you that I cut, usually about 5 to 6 inches wide, and just a nice long piece. I'm going to go ahead and measure this right here on my sewing machine. This is 15 inches long, doubled, so it's about 30 inches long. So that's a nice big piece that we can gather up. I am going to take the edge and just do a little rolled hem. I'm just going to roll it twice like this with my fingers. I'm not going to try and use a rolled hem foot. I hate those. They don't work very well for me. And I'm just going to roll that under like this and top stitch the edge. And then I'm going to do it again on the other edge here. I don't know what you have in your sewing room stash. I have bags and bags of lace, different kinds of lace that I've picked up, or I have scraps left over. Here's a nice little flat piece that should work really good. I could do a rolled hem on the end of this, just like I would do, just like I did for the back. But I think what I want to do is I'm just going to take this lace and lay it down on the bottom, and I'm going to do a running stitch right down to attach that. And you'll notice that I have it, the edge is even, and I'm just sewing that on, probably at about 1/4 of an inch, not very far away from the edge. And now I'm going to flip it to the back like this and top stitch it right there. Make sure that that's folded nice. And I do that a lot on the edges. I've done it on the sleeves as well on some of my doll clothes. It makes a nice finished edge, and it just adds a little bit of trim or accessory embellishment to the edge of your doll dress. Okay, so the next step is we're going to gather up this skirt. So what I want to do is I want to make my stitch length long again. I'm going to put it on a 5. I'm going to stitch straight across the top of this. And I may have mentioned this before in one of my previous videos, but I always do 2 rows of stitching, and probably just barely next to each other. It doesn't have to be even a certain measurement. Just kind of do 2 rows running right next to each other. And the reason why you do that is because when you go to pull on this to gather it up, if you only have 1 row of basting stitches, it is going to be really hard to attach it to your bodice. It kind of bunches up. It's really frustrating when you've sewn it onto your bodice and discover that you accidentally had a piece folded under, and it shows on the other side, and it just doesn't look good. And I'll show you, if I take both of my bobbin threads and pull on this to gather it up, I get a little bit flatter gather than I would if I only had 1 thread. It took me years. I can tell you, when my kids were little and I was first learning to make clothes for my girls, I would take shortcuts and I would say, I only need to do this 1 time. I am telling you, if you don't do it 2 times, you're not going to like the finished result, and you're going to have to rip it out probably. So do 2 of them and pull on them. They also, if one breaks, the other one is still in there and you don't have to start all over again. So I've gathered this up and tried to make the gathers fairly even all the way around. I don't know if you can see that, but I've tried to do that. So now I'm going to take my bodice and I'm going to lay it flat, and I'm going to start with this end and pin it all the way around to the other end. So after I pinned it on this end and then on this end, I just eased it all the way across so that everything fit evenly. Now I'm going to put it under my needle, and I'm going to sew this with a regular seam, making sure that we cover up all of our basting stitches. And don't sew over your pins. And sometimes as I'm adding it on there, I'll push the ruffles back and forth a little bit just to make sure that they look pretty even and they're not all bunchy. Another reason to have the 2 rows so that it lays nice and flat while I'm trying to figure out where these ruffles need to go. Okay, so if you're lucky enough to have a serger, you can take this to your serger and serge it off. If you do not have a serger, it's still nice to finish that edge. And one of the things I do is I use the 3-part zigzag stitch across the edge of this. On the brother, it's usually the 114 stitch. But it's the stitch on your machine that goes, it does a zigzag, but it's going to stop 3 times as it goes across and 3 times as it goes back. I really like it for finishing the edge, especially of a gathered edge, because it finishes off it really nice. Okay, so before I show you how that little dress came out, I wanted to show you a little bit about making a boy's shirt, because we do make dolls for little boys. And I started out the same way. I had two fronts and 4 backs, and I sewed the shoulder seams, and then I'm putting right sides together, and I'm going to sew around the neckline exactly the way I did the little girl's bodice. The difference is that I'm actually going to sew across the bottom here to finish the shirt, up the side, around, back, and back down like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've changed my thread over to white thread. And I'm going to sew. I have to line up my shoulders a little bit better so it looks good. Let's go around. Go straight down the front. Stop and pivot and go across the bottom. And then I'm going to take the back piece and I'm going to sew across the bottom of this piece too. And that way I don't have to go back and hem that later. Sew that. And then I'm going to clip the curves and turn it just like I did before. So this sleeve pattern is a little bit trickier than the other one. It doesn't have as much of a curve, but it's straighter down on the side and it's a smaller piece. I did not double this one. I just rolled it over and stitched it. But when you're putting a boy's shirt sleeve on, you don't want little puckers at the top. You don't want it to look like it's Snow White with a puffy sleeve. You want it to look like a shirt sleeve. So the trick to doing that is we're going to sew some stay stitching around the top of this. So I'm just going to put it under here and I'm just going to run a running stitch about a 1/4 inch from the edge on the sleeve and then on the shirt opening where the sleeve goes. And then I'm going to clip the heck out of it. I'm just going to put a whole bunch of little clips with my thread, with my scissors right up to the edge of that stitching, especially under the curved parts. And then again on the sleeve. I'm going to just some little slits with my scissors all the way around. A whole bunch of them. And then I gotta make sure I'm on the right side here. I'm going to take this sleeve and start in the center right here and put a pin to hold it in place. Right here. And then I'm going to pull this around, and if you've got to do it, it's nice if you have some small pins, but you have to pin it several times all the way around to make it fit so it's nice and flat without any puckers. And then I'm going to just put my needle down and I'm going to sew. I think I got that pretty good. See, that looks pretty good. I don't have a lot of little puckers and gathering across the top. I may go back across it again just to make sure that I got all the edges. But then I'm going to take it like this and fold. I'm going to put my finished edge here and my finished edge here, and then ease those two pieces together. Okay, so I finished both of those little outfits. Here's the little red one with the hearts on it. You can see that it's open all the way down the back. I can put some Velcro on that. I always use sew-in Velcro. Don't ever use sticky back Velcro. It'll mess up your sewing machine. Take my word for it. Ask me how I know. But you do want to sew the Velcro on. You can do it by hand or you can do it on the sewing machine, or you could just put it on the doll and sew it directly to the doll. It's according to whether you want it to be able to come off or not. Buttons are not a good idea for children's doll clothes. If you know how old the child is, or if you're making it for yourself, you can put buttons and charms and all sorts of pretty decorations on it. But when you're sticking with really small children, or for a charity where you don't know where the doll is going, I would really advise that you either sew it on or put Velcro on it, and don't put too many embellishments on the front of it, just for safety's sake. So there's that little dress. Here's a little boy's outfit. I didn't show you how to make shorts because they're pretty self-explanatory and easy to do. And here's how the little shirt looks on him. I could put a collar on there if I really wanted to. I just think it's one more step that I can avoid. And this one does not have Velcro on it because for the life of me, I cannot find any of my Velcro today. So I just pinned it on him. But I think he came out pretty cute. One of the things that we do with our charity sew is we do little monsters, because with little boys, sometimes if you give them a baby doll, they think that's girlish and babyish. But you give them a monster, it's kind of cool. So that's a fun thing to do when you're making little boy clothes. Here's one that I made, and this one is more little girlish for a shirt, but it also works if you put some little leggings with it. And it's got Velcro going down the front, and you can see that if you take the one part and have it kind of extend over the edge and the other part stitch it on there, it goes together really nice and it makes a nice finished edge. So I wanted to kind of show you some of my other dolls that I have that I've made in the past. You can have a lot of fun with it. You can put a couple little pleats in it and put a bow on it if you want to put a bow on it. This one here, this is a little boy that I finished up, and I crocheted some little shoes for him, put shoelaces, and I actually knitted this sweater. So that one's kind of fun too. If you're better with needles, with knitting needles or crochet hook than you are with a sewing machine, go ahead and do that, because those are really fun to do and they come out really cute when they're all finished. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is maybe something that's not a baby doll, something that looks more like a grown-up doll. This is my Sheldon doll, And this is Leonard. I made these a long time ago. These are also a nice gift to make to give away to somebody, or make them just for yourself if you really like to have dolls. I say all the time that we never really grow up. It's fun to have some dolls around. So we're going to make some dolls that are more long and skinny. I'm going to reach over here real quick. Here is, move Leonard and Sheldon out of the way here. Here is an elf, and those are really fun, and all you got to do is change the pattern a little bit and put some ears on her. So that's what we're going to do next time. We're going to get together and we're going to make some dolls that are a little bit different. You can use your imagination and dress them however it is you want to. They're really fun to make for people that just need something to make them smile. One of the things I've been doing a lot lately is making them with a breast cancer theme, and I'll show that to you next week when we come back together again. I hope you had fun making doll clothes, and in the last 2 weeks actually making a baby doll. I hope you'll try it, because it's really fun to make baby dolls, especially when it starts to get close to Christmas time, to give us gifts. If you had fun watching these videos, please like and subscribe, and you can make a comment if there's something you're thinking about that you'd like to see me do. But have a nice week, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.